Hey guys, welcome
Corona.
back to...
Oh crap. Sorry, I slipped. We weren't going to talk about Corona.
Hey guys, Editing Lou from the future here. I just wanted to give a quick little note before we jumped into this one. I really appreciated the support on the first episode of Sweet Talk. I actually did open up a SoundCloud page, so if you're more into listening to the audio, there you go. You can jump onto SoundCloud. Still figuring out the whole Spotify situation because you need to tether accounts or some crap like that. I don't know. But for now, the first 2 episodes and the upcoming episodes will be on SoundCloud. Link in the description. Thank you so much for the support, guys. Really means a lot to me. All right. Hope you enjoy the episode. Hey guys, welcome back to Sweet Talk. This is episode 2. I'm joined once again by the mighty, the legendary Knoptop, the man himself. Welcome back. Today, we have a bunch of fun things to talk about. But first off, how you doing, man? How's everything?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me back on. Is this the second one that you've done?
This is the second one. It has only taken 2 months to produce a second episode.
2 for 2. Wow, this is awesome. Thanks for inviting me back to talk about things. I hope I have enough information.
You hold the record for the most consecutive Sweet Talks in a row.
Yes.
It's a big deal. So today we're going to be talking about Super 8, the whole process behind it, why we do it, and all that fun stuff. And Knoptop is a great person to talk about this because he has a ton of experience shooting on Super 8. So when I first started doing Super 8, 2 months ago, there were 2 people that I was really talking about it. Noah from Analog Resurgence, because that dude is like an encyclopedia on the topic, and Knoptop because he has a lot of personal experience for it. So to kind of open things up, I would love to chat a little bit about your involvement in Super 8 film festivals and just overall how you even got into it. Like what started you out on Super 8?
Well, being born a long, long time ago definitely helped. I know if I had to go all the way back, I know I was still around, or I was born when Super 8 was still being used. That's so crazy to think. You'd have the Kodak, what are the photomats, the little blue box, little buildings, real small little buildings that you could drop off film and pick them up the next day. And I was really young, but I remember my dad dropping off little box, the cartridges, same cartridges you use now. And it was still, it was like fading out quick, right? And so I would watch as a kid, about the end of the month, we would be able to watch a couple minutes worth of these films of us like riding bicycles around the backyard and playing with our dog. And so that was like it was amazing because it's crazy to think. I guess it was early 80s. It was like the first time we saw ourselves, right? So it's kind of hard to comprehend a world without video cameras. This is like VHS cameras existed. They were super expensive though. So it was still cheaper to do film. At least what I understood as never did the research on the prices, but it was still cheaper to go get film developed. And so I remember, you do little tricks, like you'd play it forward, play it backwards. This is completely no sound. So I was fascinated since when I was a kid, and then fast forward 25 years, never saw it again, right? Until I got to college, and then we started messing around with actually 16 millimeter film. But then from there, it was still like it was only because of school that I even messed around with film at all, because it just was so pricey. VHS cameras would have come through, mini DV and all these new technology with digital. It just didn't make any sense to spend money on film. But now, boom, 2017, 2018, I revisited it. And that's where I know that would be the most recent experience, because I went into it sort of like almost like in a hipster mindset of like, yeah, I remember this stuff when I was young, and it's so cool that it still exists. And do you know what's the company name that is like the main staple? Is it Pro 8 or what are they called?
Yeah, Pro 8.
Okay.
Pro 8 was the one that I sent my film to as well. And yeah, definitely costly, but they did do a really good job. So we can talk more about cost in a little bit. But so I'm really interested. So that Super 8, when you were a kid, is kind of your first exposure to it. Do you think that's kind of the reason you gravitated towards filmmaking in general?
Yeah, and I'm trying to get my thoughts together because it was so impactful, and I'm trying to give some sort of metaphor or understanding for people currently. If you've ever been around kids, how quickly you'll film something maybe with your phone, and they're like, "Can I see? Can I see?" They want to see themselves right away, So it was that same intensity, except we waited 3 weeks for this, right? But it was that thing of like, whoa, this is just like we're on a video or we're on a screen, just like the famous people are. So it was like it built up in my mind, like, whoa, cool, but I think like going back from there though, or coming, I guess, getting to now, the nostalgia of it was unique to where if you look at some of my really early YouTube videos, I have a little intro, and that's me riding down. There's like a video of a guy riding down the hill on his bicycle. It's me when I was a kid, and I turned it into my logo. I don't even know if there's any videos specifically to call out, but I was like obsessed with this. Is like Windows Movie Maker. I cut this together. It was like a huge deal to like sync this up and make this little graphic where I kind of just base it around these few clips that I actually had converted over to digital. And so, because to me, even, you think about, this is late 90s, early 2000s, it was still a film look, right? That graininess that they tried to emulate with a lot of different effects and stuff. It wasn't until the DSLRs actually came back in with like depth of field. So until then, because I feel like that depth of field and the grain are the two sort of film looky type things, 24 frames a second, stuff like that. But the film for Super 8 just looks like film. As soon as you saw it, you knew that it was film. So yeah, I was still obsessed with it ever since I was young. And so for me, it was like, yeah, this is actually like a real movie. But I don't know, that was long-winded on something that was just pretty much just me being excited about someone filming me as a kid, right? But I was in Virginia, and I came across this information for a film festival, and that was when I really was like, oh, I could actually be a part of this, because I was like disconnected from all that filmmaking world. I kind of got into corporate video and stuff like that. And so I'm like, oh, okay, this could be really fun. I have a guy, he does art. I'm going to interview him. I'll do like a little mini documentary. And I was thinking of all the films, because I used to go to film festivals when I was younger just to watch. It was still like too expensive. I was paying off student loans and stuff, and I just couldn't afford to jump into this. But it was fun to go to them with my friends and watch these cool films. And so I'm like, well, this is a chance to finally do it myself, and then enter the Super Great Film Festival, and which is such a unique film festival. I don't know if you want to go into that right away, but like totally threw me off though, because it's not your typical film festival. Yeah,
tell me all about it, man.
I guess to simplify it, obviously you can look this up online. Super Great with it's a GR, the number 8. But basically, they do something really unique, and I think they're in their 12th year of doing this, or 8th year, or 10th. I don't know, whatever. They've been doing this for a few years. You film everything in camera, so any cuts and edits you do all in camera. So if you have cuts going back and forth, you have to plan them out. I would kind of relate it to like the early days of like being a kid filming stuff with your friends with a VHS camera or something, where you didn't have an editing machine. You had to like just do it manually, all the different cuts. Well, this is all done that way, and then you turn the cartridge in and you never see it again. And you can cut an audio track to what you just recorded. So if that makes sense, you can do two things, which is you could run a dual video camera, so you have a video reference of what you filmed, or you can keep very detailed written log of when you hit record and when you stopped it, and use a timer, which is what a lot of people do. And so with that, you take that, and then you have a couple weeks to edit the audio. And it is like, knowing this, it makes it so thrilling as the filmmaker, because you don't know what your film turned out like. And you're hoping that the sound mixes correctly, like it syncs correctly. And there's two instructions on how to get that the best way, because there is a little bit of a drift just because it's not perfect. That's kind of the fun of film. I think it's 18 frames a second with a Super 8 camera, but that kind of varies based on cameras and just weird settings if you kind of ramp it up a little bit or slow it down. So they have it set up to where they recommend you sync it at the beginning, right when the film starts. That's when your audio is going to start, or you sync it in the middle, which is their best thing that they recommend the most, where they're like, that way, if it's a little off, it'll only drift a little bit by the end of the 3-minute roll. And that way you can hope that the first part of the roll will be perfectly in sync. But for the most part, most people don't usually try to do narrate or actual on-screen talking. They try to just do sound effects or an overview narration that kind of doesn't rely on perfect timing, if that makes sense. But what makes it so amazing, because I've been doing this for so many years, there's definitely some ringers. These guys they got it locked down. I mean, this one guy, I don't know his name. His animations, they're perfectly timed. Like I watch it, I'm like, seriously, how? Like, it's so perfect, which makes it like it's a whole different sort of technical expertise, where from other creators, we really appreciate it. Outside of the actual story they're telling or anything, it has a whole new appreciation of, wow, they sync that audio perfectly. So all that to say, that was my most recent experience getting back into it, which as soon as I learned about the rules and understood completely how that film festival worked, I realized I'm not going to be able to do an interview. So I'm going to have to make like an artsy montage with sound effects and music, because to be able to sync up somebody talking, super hard to do by yourself. So all that to say, I decided to run a dual video camera that would record, and so I could have a video reference to sort of, instead of having to write down my timing. Because you think about this, when you pull the trigger, you hear that little clicking sound of the film camera. Well, it's like you let it off, you don't know if it clicks a few frames, like I don't know. Anyways,
it's super nerve-wracking, like, coming from the few cartridges I've shot through of Super 8, like that moment of intensity, like the second you start filming and you realize, like, okay, this is $1. I just shot $1 right now. And you really, I don't know, you get so, like, for me, like, my heart was pounding every time I was rolling, and I did that one roll that I made the video. It was roll cartridge, I don't know what the appropriate thing to call it would be, but I did that first one just as a test to make sure that the camera was working properly. And then after that, I did a short film, like I wrote a 3-page script, or 4, whatever it is, I don't know. And so I had 5 cartridges of film, and over the span of a weekend, we shot the whole thing and mailed it out. But yeah, literally every time I pulled that trigger, it was like, holy shit, let's get this right. And a lot of them we only did once or twice just to, conserve film.
Well, go back for you, because that's where I'm interested to hear, because I know you contacted me, you're like, I'm thinking about getting into this. What led up to you suddenly just going, I'm going to go in? And you didn't just go in, you bought 5 rolls of film. This is not cheap, by the way. Like, you didn't get some sort of like coupon or something.
No, not at all. Okay, so I don't have the same kind of origin like you do. Like, I don't have this kind of nostalgic relation to my childhood. I am old enough to remember, like, shooting on a VHS camcorder. Like, my dad had one, and I think I put it in one of my videos, actually, that I was, like, jokingly said I was vlogging with it, because I have, like, a video of myself, like, talking to the camera. So that's, like, my most analog experience, which is still pretty digital, to be honest. But in college, when I was doing my film stuff, I did DV tapes. Like, I have experience, capturing and digitizing, but never on film. And since I do so much film photography, and I do love filmmaking and making videos, I do it every week, I thought that it would be a really unique challenge to try and shoot it on film, especially because, like, 2019, I shot so much film photography. I thought it would be a really cool thing to do. So it was kind of in the back of my mind. And then I think what really pushed me over the edge for it was I was watching a lot of Noah's videos on the channel Analog Resurgence, and the way he was talking about it and showing the cameras and how simple it was to get into. I thought, hey, you know what? Fuck it. Let's try this. I really want to experiment with this. And, I didn't necessarily have the plan to shoot this short film. Like, I wrote this script, and, over on the other channel, Nailed It, we do a lot of different things. Like, we do a lot of horror, we do, comedy stuff, but we've never really done anything sentimental. And the script is kind of, emotional and sentimental. And I thought after that first roll was a success and I really enjoyed the process, I said to Keith, who's the guy that we make a lot of the films with. If you've been following the channel, you know who Keith is. But Keith, he was working on the script with me, and I said to him, I want to shoot this on Super 8 because it's such a drastic change from everything else we've done in terms of tone. It's not really going to match the rest of the channel, so I thought, if we're doing something drastically different in terms of tone, why not also use a completely different medium? And I think the combination of the sentimental story with this different medium, it's going to make the video stand out, and there's going to be like a stronger emphasis on that feeling, I think. Mm-hmm. It could also just be hipster trash, and we'll see what happens. But Keith was totally into the idea, and initially, kind of going back to what you were saying about like double camera, my first thought was we would have a couple of friends come with us, and they would roll digital side by side, like concurrent with the Super 8, so that if the Super 8 was trash, we would have the digital version and still have a film.
Yeah.
And I kind of mulled on that for a few, and like the week before we shot it, I just said, what, screw that, let's not do that, let's just commit, and we either get a film or we get nothing. Because my fear was if we did both, we would just half-ass both of them, you know what I mean? Like, we wouldn't be able to focus enough attention on either the Super 8 or the digital, and both of them would just, in the event that the film was fine, both of them would not be as good as they could be. So Keith and I just agreed, like, all or nothing. We're either going to get this and it's going to be awesome, or, we're going to get nothing.
And that was a great decision, by the way. Because I didn't get it. I think I might have mentioned to you after that was the issue I had. I knew I had to run the digital backup just to make sure I knew how to sync my audio. But then I was also thinking, I want to film behind the scenes for my YouTube channel. So I had a third camera rolling. This is all me by myself. So I had a third camera rolling behind the scenes, and I was also trying to watch the timer on the reel because I wanted to use half of the reel for my own personal stuff outside the film festival, which the director said I could do. And so I was like, I got to make sure it's under a minute and a half because I have to use the other minute and a half for my own personal thing.
Right.
So my brain was not in the actual film. So anyways, go on, continue.
We were very fortunate that we have a couple of people that came with us. We had our actors, which they were an actual couple, so that really helped. Because it's always weird when you get two strangers and you're like, all right, now kiss, like that's fucking weird. So fortunately they were a couple, that helped us out. And then we had a couple of the other people from that other YouTube channel I've mentioned, Super Dankness. They do sketch comedy stuff. So we had the people from Super Dankness doing behind the scenes stuff for us, because I assumed I wanted to make a video about this process, whether the film comes out and we're super proud of it or it's a piece of shit. I wanted to have behind the scenes of that. So they filmed me filming, and then Keith had my 5D, and Keith was just grabbing nat sound of everywhere we went. So we had the sounds of Manhattan and the cars going by and the people and the ocean and all that crap. So we had 3 cameras running almost constantly, but the good thing was that I was on the Super 8, so I could literally just focus on that and nothing else, and not worry about a second camera getting the same angle, and not worry about the sound of the Super 8 interfering with the audio, all that stuff. I could just focus on, hey, I'm gonna get the shot. And it was a really cool experience. It was fucking brutally cold. It was so cold. But we were troopers. Saturday was a really long day. Sunday was not bad at all. But Sunday, I think, logistically was way more complicated. But Saturday really just felt like, hey, we're walking around the city having fun, and there happens to be a camera there. Whereas Sunday was more of like, hey, we're filmmakers. But yeah, it was a really wild experience. I felt crazy the whole time. Because I've definitely made a lot of films. It's like on Nailed It, there's like a bunch. And, there's always logistics and stuff that you have to deal with. But when you have a finite amount of film, like we had 5 cartridges, so that's 15 minutes-ish. Yeah, I know they have a little more than 3 minutes each, but, for the sake of this, let's say 15, 16 minutes of footage. And you're kind of just saying, okay, well, we need to get everything we need in this short amount of time. And the other huge obstacle I made for myself, which I didn't realize at first, but you can actively swap cartridges of film. So when we were going indoor and outdoor, I was switching between Vision 50D and Vision 500T to switch for the environments. But when you pull the friggin' thing out, it resets the counter of feet. So
didn't even think of that. That's right.
So that made things way more stressful. And, when I got the film back from ProRate, I realized, like, wow, I wasted probably like 5 minutes of film just from those switches, because I didn't like adequately mark down where I was. So I could have shot more than I did.
Well, depending on who's listening right now, I'm thinking I want to go back to, because I kind of was mentioned when we talked about it a little bit on the phone, I was talking about how thrilling it is when you have that clicking sound of the shutter going and the camera's rolling, and it's pennies or nickels. I don't know what it is at this point, but that's money going, and you can't rewind it and redo. It's this thing. I'm sure Quentin Tarantino and other filmmakers that are very film focused on actual moving film, like they talk about this, where it's just like it gives you for me, it gave me it's like this extra adrenaline rush. It's stressful, but it's like fun. Like it feels like it's more real than if you're just using a video camera. Did you have what experience was that for you when you actually put your first roll in and started hit record?
When I said stressful, I didn't mean it all negative either. Like, it definitely was that kind of stress, like, oh my god, we're running out of film. But at the same time, it was like a thrill. It was a rush, you know? And the same way when I do film photography and I get the roll of film back and there's that one photo that you're like, yeah, who took that? You know, like, not me. You know, that was a similar experience, like when you're going into these environments with, you know, like sunset or something like that. It's hard to tell in the moment, you know what I mean?
Like thinking of like some of the stuff, and this is where I feel like, wow, I have a brain warp because, oh man, I feel bad saying this. Did you finish the film? Is it online?
We have a rough cut, and a good friend of mine is doing the score for it. So once he sends that, I think we'll kind of share it up and get it out in, you know, the next couple weeks.
Because I was nervous because I'm thinking, somehow I feel like I saw it, or I saw parts of it, or maybe I didn't see any of it. I don't know. And I was like worried that you already posted it and I left a comment and everything. And I'm like, oh crap. But
No.
did you send me anything? I don't know why I feel, maybe you just mentioning it in my mind, I visualized it or something. I don't know.
Did you watch the Q&A video? Because I put like 3 seconds of it in there.
Maybe that's what it was. Seriously. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, good. I feel better now that I didn't forget that this thing even existed.
Yeah.
But I was thinking back to like the shutter clicking and stuff like that. And I did have a little experience in college. I helped my friend work on a film, and it was a big project. It was sort of the same as yours. It was on 16 millimeter film, but he had 5 rolls of this, which was kind of unheard of just because it's expensive. And he's like, Dave, I want you to be the camera guy. And so that's where I revisited that experience of like feeling that adrenaline of like it's running, click 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 click, this is it, money money money. And it was not like what you see on blooper reels, like when somebody messed up, because we were shooting a legitimate movie. When people messed up, it was like everybody was mad, mostly just us on the crew side, because we're like, we just lost, like that wasn't even a good mess up, it wasn't even like usable for anything, you know. And so that was like that first experience with that. But then thinking of the thing with like the film festival involvement that I had later, this is where, because of my limited amount of exposure to film, like obviously when I was a kid, someone filmed me, but I never thought about what I was doing when I was actually filming. So it was my first time doing it. And I never really thought about like what it would be like just to film stuff for fun because I was watching the timer, sort of the same as what you were describing. I was like, I had fun doing it for sure, but I remember looking back at my footage going, I don't even remember shooting half of these shots. And I think because I knew I just needed a couple seconds of something, and I filmed it real quick on set. And that's where if I had more opportunity, and that's where I was talking to you about, where I'm like, I got to do it again. And this time I want to do it without the stress of a film festival and just do it knowing that I have a roll of film to use for something. And really still think about how much time I'm filming, but mostly look for quality shots. Because even as a young person, I always loved cinematography. And somehow I shifted into like the technical side of everything, and which is like me thinking of the numbers rolling or the clicks happening on the camera for film, and not thinking of, oh yeah, it's actually, you can get really cool angles with this camera and unique lens flares with these cool old lenses, you know. Sort of revisiting that, and I guess it would be the closest to like what you experience with film photography, where you can kind of enjoy the fun of the aesthetic of actual film, you know?
Yeah.
And not get caught up in all the technical stuff.
Well, I think it's also something that's interesting about it that happened to me is, you know, when I walk around and take pictures in Manhattan, like I go unnoticed. You know, like I've very rarely had an instance where someone has come up to me and said, hey, what are you doing? You know, not even like in a negative way, just like genuine curiosity. You know, everybody knows what a camera is, right? You know what I mean? Like even if it's a film camera, like people are used to it, especially where I'm from, you know, whereas when I was out with the Super 8 camera, the amount of people that said, what are you working on? Like people thought I was like some crazy artist, you know? And I had a really interesting experience. One of the shots that I wanted to do was the couple in the film, like having dinner together. So me and the crew, you know, we went out, we actually got dinner. You know, we were all just like having such a good time and joking around that we forgot to get the shot. So like right before we left, I ran. It's a small restaurant, but I ran opposite them to just get like a 2 shot of them eating. And there was like another couple sitting at this table to the left of me, so I was like vaguely in their space, but not like at their table or anything like that. And the second I started rolling, they both like stopped and they were staring at me. And the dude is like, "Hey man, when you're done, I just want to ask you something." And in my head, I'm like, "Oh, cool." He's probably there's this weird clicking thing next to him. He probably is curious about what the hell I'm doing. So I stop and I'm like, "Hey, look, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to like interrupt. I just wanted to do this thing really quickly." And the guy goes, "No, that's totally cool, man. Hey, listen, if you were engaged, how long would you wait before you got married?" And I was like, "What?" Like, I was so thrown off and uncomfortable. And there was this woman across from him, and she was just like eyes locked on me. And I was like, I feel like this is a loaded question. Like, I don't want to be a part of this. And he goes, no, for real. It's no big deal. Just tell me, So I answered, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like it's pretty normal to wait like a year or something like that. And then the girl, just without skipping a beat, just goes, "So 4 years is too long, right?"
Oh my God.
And I just, dude, I like panicked because I'm not equipped to handle these kinds of interactions. And I was like, I think my girlfriend would kill me if I did that. and that was it. And then the guy just goes, "All right, thank you." And I went back to, so they didn't ask about the camera at all. But yeah, that was a weird experience. But like on the train, people were so interested. Like someone asked me what the name of the film was going to be so that they could look it up. And like, good luck because I didn't have a name for it yet. But it was just, it's really interesting that not only were people interested, but generally very friendly at seeing something like this, because it is unique and not a lot of people do it. And I think there is a reason, because it is so expensive and it is so impractical. So with that said, I'm really curious, in the year 2020, why Super 8? Why still try and do this? Why preserve this art form?
That's a good question. Oh, you want me to answer it? No.
Yeah. in your opinion.
Yeah, I know that's something I struggle with, because I was thinking of throughout the years. So I had that exposure as a kid. Then I actually messed around with film in school, and then I did it again on my own during that recent film festival a few years ago. But in the meantime, when iPhones were invented and all these things were happening in technology, and specifically with the iPhone, the apps and the things, and suddenly I was late to the game. I had like an iPhone 5, I think, and I got it like 2 years after the fact. But there's this cool film app. I was like, oh, this is cool. It looks kind of like film. And I was sort of obsessed with it. And I had this feeling of like, this is going to introduce me into film for free. This is going to be amazing. But honestly, it was the aesthetic. I say aesthetic, it's not the right word. The ergonomics of holding a phone, the mental thing of holding a phone compared to holding a real camera, kind of like what you're describing. Typically it's sort of like an iconic look. That pistol grip is very iconic for the Super 8 cameras. It didn't exist when you're holding an iPhone. And so all that to say, it never really satisfied the same. And so I was like, man, I remember thinking I have had tons of different apps on my phone, and I just never used it ever, because I'm like, it's low quality. I'll just, whatever. So all that to say, here we are now where I'm like, okay, I have a little bit of money to spend. If I would call it hobby money, like in the sense of like, okay, the thing is, though, I'm saying a little bit of money, but you're talking, what is it? If I'm right about, I'm not sure if I've been out of the game too long. You get a cartridge of film plus developing, and does it cost like $150, or is it less than that?
It depends on the film. I feel like it's probably a fair thing to say it'd be like $125 to $150 per roll, depending on what you're doing. Like Ektachrome is way more expensive.
Yeah, and so you're talking silent film, 3 minutes per cartridge, just to get that out there. So then you break that down into money, and it is weird because I'll add the developing just because more likely than not it's going to be processed. You're going to send it somewhere, and I guess you have to also include shipping too. But whatever the case, so yeah, it's weird because it does seem, I'm not even that fancy, and I'm like, man, that is kind of crazy. It's pretty expensive, but it is weird because I think it's obviously a biased thing, because I'm like, yeah, my involvement in the few moments I have had to experience with it, it makes it worth it for someone like me. Like for me, I feel like it totally is worth it. But at the same time, I'm not sitting here with a couple packages of film on the shelf behind me. You know what I mean? Like I haven't jumped on it. I still need a little bit more of a reason. And I relate it to sort of, this is so random, but I relate it to like animation. I feel like people that are going to do literally like the old school animation type of a short film or a film, they're going to make sure their story's good because they know how many hours and how much time's involved with it. I feel like it's not guaranteed that it's going to be a good story, but I feel like because of the costs, in that case, it's time, how long it takes to make a stop motion or an animation, they make sure they develop a good story. I've never really focused much on story, and so for me, it's hard to justify it sometimes because I'm like, wait, I'm going to do this on film? This is just sort of like a random idea that I maybe I need to film this on video first to see if it's even a good thing. But anyway, so yeah, I jump back and forth. I think I'm very swayed to do it if like, being friends with you and you talk about it, I'm like, I'm totally going to do it too. I got $150 to spend. But I still wait around until you're totally sure you're going to buy it too, So what do you think? What is it? Do you feel like it's worth it now? I go back and forth just because it's got a lot of neat things about it, but I am very purpose driven. Like I need more than just, because you think about it, once you get it developed, it basically is going to be digital again.
Right.
Unless you're going to show it at a theater and a real projector, nobody's ever going to see this film again except on their phone or on a computer screen or a TV screen. So that's what's kind of like, whoa, that's weird. Maybe that's like too much reality, and it's like that takes away from the fun, dreamy art side of it. But it's like, no, it's kind of the truth. Like, I don't know. So what do you think? what do you think it's worth it? I'm on the fence.
I think it really depends on your situation. Like, first off, I can say that I am super fortunate in the sense that I upload stuff to YouTube and a group of people care that I do that. So my justification for going into this was anything at all that I've gotten from ad on my videos, which is not much, but that all went into this project. So first off, thanks to my audience for even permitting me to do this, because I don't make money like that to be able to say, yeah, I'm just going to buy 5 packs of Super 8, you know what I mean? And that's been my attitude, is like whatever money I make from the channel, I want to put back into it, because I think it just makes sense that way. So, in my scenario, I think it was easier for me to say that as opposed to like, if I'm living paycheck to paycheck, am I going to say I'm going to buy 5 cartridges of film and go shoot a Super 8? Like, no, I'm probably going to pay a bill, So in my scenario, I feel really fortunate that I can do it. But that said, I also think that it's important to preserve the art of it, in the same way that people still care about film photography. It's a very different mindset. And now that I can say that I've shot a short film on Super 8 and I've shot a bunch on digital, I think the real value comes in the craft of it. There is this importance in being very decisive, and there is that hipster like, oh, it's all about the moment. But in this scenario, it causes you to be so decisive with every single thing you do. I can do something 100 times on digital. You got that 64 gig memory card, like you can do 100 takes if you want. Whereas Super 8, we had this one moment where it was sunset, and we had the view of the water and the Statue of Liberty, and they were perfectly set up on a bench, and there was just this old guy just standing there taking snap shits with his fucking phone. No disrespect to him, because the iPhones are definitely giving you a better image than my Canon Super 8 camera for sure. But it was like he knew exactly where we were shooting and just kept repositioning to be in the shot. And it was fine until he started texting. And then he was just standing there and texting. And there's this really amazing behind the scenes where it like zooms in on the back of his head and then into like my eye, because you can see just the despair. That was a total tangent. I don't know where I was going with that. But I think the biggest thing is just, for me, it really made me consider and value every time I hit record, whereas on digital it was just like, yeah, we'll just do it until we get it right. Whereas when I was in that moment, I felt like, I need to get this right, because I'm gonna let my bank account down and I'm gonna let everyone around me down. So I need to be, I felt like I never had to bring my A game so much.
Oh, yeah. Because
like digital, there are times where we were shooting some of our short films where it's like I show up hungover and, it's like, all right, let's do this, whereas like with this, I needed to be razor sharp every second of the day. And that to me, when I got the film back, that's where the real reward came to me, and I was like, holy shit, like I made this. That is so crazy. And it was a mixed bag. There's some garbage in there for sure. But when I got the rolls of the Daylight film back, holy crap, dude, I felt like I could cry. Like it was
all overexposed.
Cry like, holy shit, I shot this. Like, this is my film.
Okay.
And there are so many shots that came out better than I could have imagined.
Oh, that's cool.
There's some that will never see the light of day because they're so, well, they probably will because I'll probably show them on this channel, but there's some shots that are garbage, but there's also some magic in there that just, it's like, it's that moment with film photography or shooting Super 8 or whatever you're doing, that when you get your film back and you look at it and you say like, this is why I do this. And it's such a hard feeling to convey to someone who's never tried it before. But that's just, for me, that's the part. Like when you see it and it's just like, it's overwhelming. Like the first time, like even the video I put up on the channel of just like testing the Super 8 camera, when I got that back, it was so emotional for me. Because it was just like, I did this. Holy shit, that's crazy. Like, on digital, it's just like, digital, it feels very utilitarian. It's like, okay, I shot this for my video that's going up on Monday. Whereas Super 8, it's like I got that email and I dropped everything. And I was just like, oh my God, it's here. And I was like nervous to watch it because I thought it was going to suck. And it's certainly not perfect. But it was just, I don't know, it's so hard to describe the emotions I felt when I watched it.
Well, and like thinking about that, I'm very indecisive about everything, and even in me responding with like, I'm on the fence about whether or not it's worth it in 2020. But like that is true what you said. Like it does offer for someone like me a chance to say, okay, this is the recording. Do I want to film it again? No, I only have this much roll of film. Can't do it. And I have to decide to say, that's the words I hate, which is that's good enough, right? Without even knowing if it is, because I'm not gonna know until a couple weeks later when it gets developed. But that is something that definitely is. I guess it's a lot like film photography too, where it's like, okay, that's the shot we got, that's it. But I think about, for me specifically, even as you were talking about that, I'm like, I think the thing that draws me the most to the film, the working with actual film, is the film festival, which for me is the live studio audience, right? Of playing this film back. And I know that was a unique circumstance with this specific super great film festival, but I think any film festival, to be able to sit in a room, if they had stuff like that, and I know they do this, but like locally, I've never been a part of this, where if they had places where you could go and watch that with regular videos, I'd probably still love that too, just as much. But that to me is what really like sort of connected the film and my love for it again. Because even as you're talking about all this, I'm like, I don't really have a super strong passion to work with film and spend $100 or plus, for every roll, unless I was going to be able to experience watching it projected somewhere. I don't know why that's part of the whole package for me personally, is the projection part of it. That being said though, I think it was edited digitally, or not edited. I'm sorry. The stuff I did was, what do you call it? It wasn't edited. It was all done in camera. But the way they assembled it together, I think they assembled it together in a nonlinear editor. So that's the only thing that's still left in my repertoire, or whatever you want to call it, the things that I'd like to do and say I did it, which would be cut it the way I learned, which was like splicing it, actual film together. That would totally just be the hobby side of just something I want to say I did. Like, not only are you watching a film that I shot on film, but every edit, every cut is one that I picked because I thought this one was good, which I can't even comprehend how that, I can't imagine that ever is how they did that. When you think about watching, you look at hundreds of frames and you go, oh, no, that's the one. We want to cut it right there, play it back. But yeah, the reason I know I float around, and I know I was thinking about it as you were saying this, it's hard. It is weird because I let things get in my mind. I heard this director he was talking about when he was a young filmmaker and he was alive. He's still alive, I think, but he was talking about when he was shooting films and stuff with his friends in the 60s and 70s and stuff. In that era where this Super 8 film was very popular, he was like, if we could have had digital technology back then, we would have totally been using that. I don't know what this hype is about using lo-fi film when you can have this amazing 4K HD video. And that's where he was obsessed with the detail of the quality of that. And it's like, maybe it is just a romantic, unexplainable feeling of just looking at it. But it is interesting because I think now more than ever, for the general public, I think it's hard, even for myself too, it's hard to really watch lo-fi video. Harder now more than ever, I think, just because we are now very accustomed to HD. Even the detail on our smartphones, so high quality and crisp that it does work out, because like an actual film, when it's shrunk down, looks pretty good on a phone. You blow it up on a big screen and it's definitely got like a nice soft, what do you call that, aesthetic, right? Which I know that's all part of the Super 8 film aesthetic, but it is weird because I think about that where I'm like, is this enjoyable for the general public? Who cares, I guess, right? As long as we have fun doing it. But yeah, so that's why I float around with it, because I do think about the psychology and stuff of it, where it totally, I mean, I guess that's probably, maybe that's where I somehow don't want to be that artsy about it, and I should be, which is like, nope, this is totally for me. I want it to look like this, and I'm happy with it. I don't care if everyone else hates it. I'm just not that dedicated to my craft to be like, I kind of want it to be acceptable to other people. But it is fun to be able to say, in this time and age where everyone can shoot video on their phones, to be like, oh no, this isn't a regular video, this is on film, right? I think there's something to that, whether people admit it or not. It is that little extra zing, like, you make videos, but I just made a film and it cost me almost $1,000. Well, that was stupid. Is it any good? Kinda. I don't know.
That's gonna be me in a couple weeks.
Well, I think about it because in an era, so I had a VHS camera. I remember specifically it was an RCA. Got it at Sears. Awesome little camera, and you carried it sort of like a little miniature briefcase. It had a top handle, right? And I'm not big. I don't like getting attention or anything. I try to blend in as much as I can. But secretly, I did like how everybody always looked at us when we would go out in our groups, because I always carried this thing everywhere. I filmed everywhere. This is like 95, 96, 1996, 97 era. So it was very rare for someone to be carrying around a VHS camcorder around everywhere. Like I would take it to like amusement parks and everything, because I was like, I want to just film this stuff. It's stuff everybody can do now with their smartphones, but back then, I think that's one of the things I started to get bitter about, where as the technology upgraded itself and everybody could do this, I wasn't special anymore, if that makes sense. And so I do lock into that, and I'm like, no, I liked being, because right now, like in this day and age, if you say you make YouTube videos, it's still a pretty small group of people that do that, but it's not inaccessible to everybody like it used to be. Like it used to be hard to upload a video to the internet. You had to really know what you were doing to compress it and use reels. Oh, don't make it a QuickTime, or what was it, Real Player? Don't make it a Real Player video. Like all that stuff you had to deal with, freaking interlaced lines and all that junk. So that's fun, but it definitely brings back the uniqueness of it. Like, oh, this isn't just a video. This was shot on moving squares of film, like being exposed to light, which is crazy. So yeah, the technical side of it is also, I think it kind of makes it like, yeah, this is sort of unattainable to most people too, again. So that draws me back into it. I'm back and forth. I'm sure if you asked me on a day that my bank account was looking real good, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm all in. But where right now I'm like, well, I don't really have tons of extra cash to spend. I mean, I'd do it as long as we have a good place to show it somewhere, which would probably just end up being on YouTube.
So with that in mind, like going off your bank account statement and all that jazz, do you think you can justify the price, or is it just something like that? It's like, it would be nice, but because to me that's kind of where I am. Like it's a would be nice kind of thing, and certainly every film I make will not be on Super 8. Like the overwhelming majority will be digital, because I can't justify spending a couple $100 to shoot 3 minutes. I just can't do it.
It's weird. Yeah, I mean, I hate going off on these tangents and thinking about it, but it is weird because the look that I'm trying to create, I was filmed, like I said, I was a little kid, and I was filmed. Oh wow, I have home movies of me on film. But my era was video. And I think that's where you and I kind of connected, where I'm like, my film camera is really a VHS camera. I have more stuff filmed on VHS than any other format. as far as like my filmmaking career, if you want to call it that.
Right.
When I think about it, I mean, I have VHS tapes full of cool little crappy movies that are probably just replicas of videos or movies I actually saw. But at the time, they seemed like they were my own. And I'm thinking, why am I so obsessed with film when really what I grew up doing? But all that to say, though, it still is like, well, it at one time, and I think because I've heard grown-up directors and stuff talk about this when I was a kid, it has that look that's different than anything else. It's like a alive, the grain, the way the colors merge and stuff. I guess now we would just call it blurry, but like it really is. It has this look that it's film that I really don't know if they have applications that really can duplicate it the way it really is. I know there's some videos. DSLR Guide kind of did one where he sort of simulated a digital version of, and it was pretty close. But then you get back into just the aesthetic of holding the camera and the ergonomics of just hearing clicking noises and stuff. But yeah, so I don't know why I went off on that little thing, but I was just thinking of, I do go back and forth because I'm like trying to rationalize this romantic thing that I'm like, no, technically I can't explain it, but yeah, I feel like it's, if I, in the right circumstances, I would say totally. And I think mostly it's because it's still available, and it could be this time next year that they all shut down and there's only like one or two rolls still available on eBay for $300 or $400 a piece. And it's like, I lock onto more of the nostalgia of being able to kind of feel like I was a part of that. I bought those when I could. I mean, it already is like that when I think about VHS tapes. I mean, I was at the store. They still sell VHS tapes at corner stores, which is really bizarre to me. And they cost like $6 a piece. I'm like, who's paying $6 for a VHS tape? Anyways, but I'm just thinking like, man, I remember buying like a 6-pack and these things were $1 a piece. But just thinking of that, where it's kind of fun to say that you're a part of it. I don't know if you ever feel like that. I feel like that with Polaroid film specifically, where I know it got reintroduced, but we would all say it's not the same as it used to be. And it really isn't, because I remember as I was a kid and we would just, dude, we didn't care nothing, man. We out in the middle of winter, in the middle of summer. It didn't matter if it was hot or cold. We just took pictures and they developed perfectly. And it was like, this is good enough. But I feel like it was fun. It's fun to be able to say I was a part of it. And so that's probably the main reason to say in 2020, yeah, now I can wrap it up. In 2020, it is worth it because it's available, and it might not be available this time next year or the year after that. And if somebody has passion to kind of do something the way things used to be done, I think that's the unique thing. I have an old film editor. I think it's a Super 8 editor. It's a portable one. It's in a box. It's so cool. You unfold it, and it has the little splicer, and it has these little all the chemicals and stuff to like splice and glue stuff together. And I thought that's probably the next thing, of shooting it and editing it in that little actual editor and doing it. Of course, I do all this because I'd want to film it as a YouTube video, though. So there's always an agenda behind it.
You would absolutely have to. Like that sounds so cool.
And it's weird to think, because this little portable box, it's about the size of a large shoebox, and it folds open into this cool stacking box. I'm like, this would have been an editor in the I don't know the years exactly. Let's just say early 70s, late 60s. This would have been somebody's, probably his job. Like, he goes to a place and he's like, yeah, I'm portable. I can set up anywhere and edit. That's what I think is crazy, to think, like, actually going through squares going, I want to get this square. It looks like right there they're getting ready to say the words I want them to say. Cut. I think that would be, but that's all just based on just knowing that it's more archival in the sense of, this is how it was done. Let's see if we can replicate it, which I think you talked about it, actually developing the film ourselves. So that kind of stuff to me that is like, oh, that'd be fun just to experiment with. It would definitely, the idea of it's definitely fun. Thinking of the actual numbers involved, because we'd still have to pay $30 or $40 for a roll of film to test it on. Yeah. Oh no!
Over the summer, though, we should definitely try and do that. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, and it is always interesting, because I think about, like, you wrote this up and we wanted to talk about it, and I'm like, I never really think about who might be listening to it, because I always feel like I'm trying to convince people, oh, this is why you should do it, instead of, the people that might already be on the same page as you and I, where they're like, oh yeah, I totally am on the same page. I totally have filmed with it before. I'd love to get into it again. Hopefully something we've talked about maybe re-inspired some people. But
yeah, maybe. I think that the best way to sum it up for me is it's not rational. That's it. Okay. Like, but none of this is. Like, none of what I do is rational. Like when I go out and make a film, and I asked my friends to give up their weekend where they could have been watching Netflix or, just chilling out, doing whatever, and come out with me in the 10-degree, windy-ass New York City weather to make a film that might not even come out. It's not rational.
Mm-hmm.
But I do it because I love it. And that to me is the biggest thing. There's no way to justify this to someone who just doesn't get it. You know what I mean? Like, none of this stuff. Filming in the woods over the summer for my zombie thing, a couple years ago, how many people gave up how many weekends to just try and help me achieve a vision I had. It's not a normal behavior. And I think that's what makes it so special. But one of the things you mentioned is actually something I wanted to kind of run by you as well. You had mentioned DSLR Guide made a video about getting the Super 8 look on digital, and there's countless tutorials out there on how to do that. I'm sure me and you could probably make one too. Is there a value in that? We kind of discussed too this idea that if HD 4K stuff was around, directors back then would have used it. Why take this pristine 4K footage and trash it and make it look like 4K and make it look like Super 8? Is there even a reason to do that?
Yeah, and that's something I think about because honestly, I feel like the people that are doing it because of not... What am I trying to say here? It's because of something they saw in a movie and they're like, oh, let's do this because it's an old film, so it'll kind of represent like the old days. But the problem is, it's not really a problem, but the thing is, most of the people creating this content and using old film, they weren't even alive when this stuff was popular and even being used. Like, there's no, because it's been so many years removed now since film was like, someone like me, I guess, you think about, very rare, I would say, anyone in their 30s would have had childhood video or childhood film, right? And so it seems odd that it would be you as a teenager on film. But in movies, we see that a lot because you have these older actors or characters being played, and then it cuts to like a scene. And I think that stuff is in the back of our minds as filmmakers, these movies and stuff we've seen growing up through the 70s and 80s and 90s. And then we think, oh yeah, this is a flashback. This is like a dreamy moment of the old days, the way things were. And that's where I don't know if it really... I feel like people are probably in the same boat as you and I, where they're saying, yeah, there's no reason to explain it. It's just, it would be cool to try it because we saw it once before in a movie, or it has this thing. And I think that's why there's this influx of people doing VHS throwbacks, because I think they're finally realizing this is that old days for them. The little numbers rolling in the bottom corner with the date and that very like iconic blocky letters of a VHS camera for a birthday party, right? There's way more people that have experiences and can relate to that now than the old film reel of a kid at a party. Because I think about that, and I don't know any specific movies offhand to name, but I know that in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen that almost, I would say, countless times. The flashback scene that's on film. Or even I'm just thinking of, somehow it's in my mind of just people sitting watching an actual roll of film being projected. And it's like, it's just that typical like in the attic scene type of thing. They get out the old film projector and they're watching a roll of film when they were a kid at a birthday or a Christmas party. And I'm like, yeah, so I don't know. I feel like I don't know if there's a point to it, because that's what I was going to ask you. Like, do you think, like, thinking of what people used to love about the film, it had a certain look and aesthetic. A lot of times it would have like a depth of field that was sort of something that was very rare during the video age. I would say that late 90s, late 80s, early 90s, it was just everything was video.
Right.
But like, what does film really offer now compared to the amazing, I think about a full frame sensor digital camera shooting 4K video. It has this, I call it bokeh. I think you say bokeh, but like that super soft, cool looking bokeh. And like, to me, that the look is so amazing.
It's beautiful.
Film can't create that. Yeah, Super 8, it's going to be really hard for you to create that on a Super 8 camera. So like, what is Super 8 really bringing to the table other than making everything just look very blurry?
I think, and I'm just kind of putting these thoughts together now, so excuse if they sound crazy. I think the real reward, the real benefit is to the filmmaker. and not necessarily the audience. Like, the audience can enjoy and appreciate the film, but I think that shooting it on Super 8 gives you a different kind of connection to what you're shooting. Like I said before, like the idea of being more present and you know, being more active in every moment of it. It just feels very different. Like, I feel like I have a very different emotional connection to what I filmed in this one than I do when I normally shoot. Like, there's still always that moment of like, holy shit, I did that. That's so cool. You know, like when a shot comes out really well, you know, like, and you're throwing blood around or something like that and it looks really legit, or like the makeup looks just perfect, or you catch the light at just such a way that just pops, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to say this in like disregard digital, because I feel like I'm kind of over romanticizing Super 8 a little bit, because here's the thing, I'm never gonna stop shooting digital. It just makes the most sense for me, and I still get so amped when I look at footage that I shot and it's like, holy shit, that's cool. You know what I mean? Like, I get like a little kid when I look through my memory cards. You know, I also have that self-deprecating like, hey, you suck, dude, you've been doing this for how long and that's out of focus. But there's just, it's indescribable for Super 8 for me, and maybe that'll wear off. You know, maybe if I do end up shooting another short film, I won't feel as connected to it as this one, because this was my first time doing it and everything felt super special. I don't know, I feel like doing it, you know, it's the same thing. Like, I do the VHS cam stuff in a lot of my videos now, and that would certainly feel a lot more interesting to me if I was actually shooting on tape and digitizing it. And I gotta tell you, I wouldn't be doing that because that's way too much work.
And ironically enough, it's a lot of work, but it's almost the same as the amount of work, except with film. Film is a little bit more manual, because you think about film, you have to have outdoor. If it's colored film, you have outdoor negative or indoor negative or whatever it would be called. You'd have the two different types of film. You have to watch your exposure. You have to make sure your focus is not focused to your eyepiece, but focused to the distance. You know, all these actual technical things that you'd be doing, where in video, you have to plug in the cord, make sure the FireWire connection works. You know, wait, do people still use FireWire? Right? Get the adapter. All this it's like different work. It's just not as physical. Like, you know, you think about, that's probably the draw for me is, if it is the same amount of work, it's like digging a hole compared to sitting at a computer digging a hole. Does that make sense? Where it's an actual, you have to physically move cameras around. Because I always, and I find myself, even as you're saying that, I'm trying to rationalize it to myself, and I'm like, why do I keep doing this? Because maybe it doesn't need explained, but I need to explain it, which is, I try to think about, what does film offer that nothing else offers, which I guess is the thing of holding the camera, hearing the clicking film, being worried about exposure, how much time you have left. That's something it offers. I think it's the same reason I was drawn to certain apps. Like, I remember when Vine was really popular, it was a 6-second limitation. I'm like, ooh, limitations. I love limitations. Because right now with video in that world, it's pretty unlimited, especially now that they figured out all the cameras where they can record almost endlessly on one card. As long as you have a large size memory card, you just film forever. You can rack the iris up, or, you know, make the ISO crazy and make it low. You have a really accurate preview, so you already know what you're getting. It's kind of like unlimited as far as what you want to do. And it kind of, for me, creatively, it's sort of like, well, now that I can do anything, I don't want to do any of it. Where on film, you have limitations, because you're like you said, like, you're limited to time. You're limited to how many retakes you do, making final decisions. If you're trying to like create a movie based on a script, how many shots you can get on certain rolls of film. Those limitations can, I feel like, help stimulate the creative side. But I don't know if we really, or for me, I should say, just speak for myself, I feel like I haven't really optimized what film can do. Like, I think about, like, in the old days, they used to scratch on the film to make like video effects of lightning, or like, you know, you think of, I don't know if they did this in the Ghostbusters, but you think of like electric rays and things like this, like things shooting. It'd probably be done back in the early days back. I'm thinking like Frankenstein movie type stuff, where they would want to show lightning and they would scratch on the film, the lightning bolts every frame. That's a cool thing you can do on film. I did it once in Photoshop on digital video, where I literally, Photoshop used to let you import a whole video clip, and it would break it into frames. And me and my friend used to do this, and we would draw on every frame. and then it almost be like if you've ever seen that Justin Bieber music video that has that every frame has weird animation drawn on it from all these fans drew on these frames. Have you ever seen that video?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I just admitted that I did. But if you ever look it up, I can't remember the name of the song, but I know that it has hundreds or thousands of frames overlaid, and they did it in there. But that's where they sort of did what I think is a benefit of what you can do on film, which is you can manipulate the actual moving pictures. Since there are hundreds of photos or actual hundreds of frames of images on this roll of film, you could go in if you wanted. They do it, where they colorize, right? You could go in and actually with a dye, you could colorize black and white film, which is something like, why would anyone do that? But it's more of like, well, why do people collect things, or why do people have gardens? Like if it's something you're interested in as a hobby, it's available, which is kind of neat. But I think I don't really spend much time thinking what else it really offers, because it's a square, right? It's square. It's 4:3 ratio. What does it offer? Black and white? Yeah, like it's weird. It's a weird thing. Like, I guess it's probably not good to try to rationalize it too much, because I definitely talked myself out of it pretty quickly. I'm just thinking, I do think back to the thing that I wanted. Well, like, okay, here's a perfect example. This is so random, but you get on Instagram, you see people saying, hey, everybody, how you doing? They're talking to the camera. You see this over and over again, all these different people posting video. And then all of a sudden you see somebody that took a DSLR video and transferred it to a long vertical video and uploaded it to their Instagram. And it stands out. It kind of punches. The background's really blurry, and it's got this amazing color and rich, vibrant look to it. It totally differentiates from the cell phone video. And it's weird because in modern times, I'm like, whoa, this is sort of how I used to feel about film, right? Where it's like, ooh, this isn't the usual. And that's how it used to be with like dealing with VHS. You suddenly see somebody that shot something on a Super 8 camera or a 60 millimeter camera. It's like, oh, this isn't VHS. Look at those reds. They're not bleeding into anything. This is amazing looking. I feel like I don't know if I still have my own residuals of just like, am I still like just relying on this feeling I had once when I was a little kid and I first saw like an independent film shot on a 16 millimeter or a Super 8 film reel, and I'm like, yeah, it looks so different. And I'm like, so does a DSLR camera when you look at enough lo-fi video, right? I don't know.
No, man, you're absolutely right. I think the biggest thing is like you can't get too caught up in your head about it. You got to just do it, And obviously that's not saying, hey, go throw yourself in debt to make this film. I don't think it's something that you can really rationalize or put into words. It's just something you feel pulled to do it for some reason. It's like a filmmaking bucket list.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I was mentioning like editing myself. But I know this was something, and I only thought of it just now. I remember hearing about it in school on 16 millimeter film. It's a little bit larger film, and there's a track for film that has audio. It has an audio track. Well, there is even, these are the old independent filmmakers, they would go in and scratch that audio track and make their own audio. But it would sound very surreal because it's literally hand done. So it would be very uneven, and it would be all over the place with how it sounds. But that was their way of manipulating the film in a way that you can't do any other way, like on video. I guess you'd take it through applications and you could do those same little weird modifications to the audio. I know that was something that when I heard about that when we were in school, I was like, oh, that's neat. I like the idea of it. Of course, though, now that everything's so readily available, it seems kind of ridiculous to spend hundreds of dollars to do something that I can just go click, click, reverb, done, echo effect, change the pitch, done. But yeah, it is that. I think it's that manual thing, which I still think, whether people ever admit it or not, that there's something innate in like humans that is just, there's something about physically doing something compared to having to rely on digital stuff. I think that's why we still have controllers with knobs and buttons. It's just, there's something about them that the majority of us like to turn the knob or hit the switch compared to just having the mouse move over and double click to activate it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me.
I think you're absolutely right. Hey, man. Well, I think hopefully we've given people enough inspiration to give it a shot or to completely think we're crazy for doing this. But Knoptop, I gotta say, Dave, whatever, I don't know what to call you on the podcast. It's super weird. I think we've given people some stuff to think about. So let us know in the comments below if you're gonna try this out because of this podcast, and sorry for making you spend a lot of money if that's the case. But anyway, where can people find you?
Well, I would say YouTube. So youtube.com/Knoptop, Knoptop. And especially since I will be actually, I got to be careful saying this. Yeah, I guess I'm going to have to. I'm going to be sharing the video of this adventure that I had with this Super Great Film Festival, and you'll actually be able to see all the stuff I was talking about, which is really cool. And especially like you, Lou, like you'll be also posting this, so anyone listening to this will be actually able to see these things that we've been going on and on about. And definitely right now on my YouTube channel, if you go into my archives, you can see that little intro I talked about. It's little Knoptop, little me. I like to brag because I was 3 years old, by the way, riding a bicycle. Just throw that out there, my claim to fame. 3 years old, man. That's all I got. You better film that. But yeah, so that's it. YouTube and obviously TikTok. I've been hanging out. I like it over there. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I tried, and you know what's funny? The one that really blew up is me showing a clip of the film.
Yeah, the
Super
paint,
8
right?
film.
The one where...
Yeah, and...
that shit's crazy.
And that's something you can get a little preview if anyone jumps over there, because one of the things I did for both the film festival, because I love the live studio audience, I filmed in the studio, or I say studio, but in the audience, I filmed during my projected film because I wanted the silhouetted heads in the audience. There's just something about, I haven't had tons of experience with that, and I'm like, oh, so you'll get a little super preview of that. I mean, it's literally seconds, but it's something until I can actually upload the actual video on my YouTube channel. Thanks again for having me on, though.
Dude, hell yeah. Thanks for being a part of this and sharing your experiences with this. This is definitely something not everyone has done, so hearing about the personal is so dope. And guys, thank you so much for checking out Sweet Talk. And guys, I will see you whenever the next episode happens. All right, dude, thanks again for coming by.
All right, thanks, man.